Enjoy the show. Once a cheater, always a cheater is a cliché that I don't view as an axiom, but you'll find plenty of love-struck, weak-minded fools who believe their cheater is different from everyone else. The worst part is that I am among those to suffer as many disappointments as they will allow before putting an end to it and taking action. You might think I have everything at home, but I'm Janet Monroe, and the cheater in my world is my husband, Luther Monroe. This is the third time I've caught him cheating. I've never been a big baseball fan, but 3 strikes and you're out sounds enticing. Luther is a good man. Well, he's a good person when he's sober. When he drinks too much, he's usually still a good person, but the problem with usually and rarely is that they don't go well with never. There's one more thing about my dear husband: he likes to be dominant in bed. You know, intim, not love. I just don't like it. Apparently that's why I forgave Luther both times. Although to say I forgave him is only partly true. He stepped into the situation and found a woman who liked his aggressiveness. He was truly sorry, and after drinking too much, this woman was so in love with him that he was weak. He promised it wouldn't happen again. I took care of our 1.5-year-old daughter while we were trying to conceive a second child. I put my career on hold for 6 to 8 years because we wanted children. I didn't even think about it at the time, but discovering my husband's infidelity would have left me with a short end of the stick. It may be different for others, but for me, the biggest loss was realizing that my husband saw me as a victim. I think he believes I was too naive. A few cocktails later, the girl waves her ponytail in front of his face, and he just can't resist. Nonsense, he was looking for an opportunity to be a victim and allowed it to happen. I get angry at friends who claim they're 13 pounds heavier. Nonsense. They weigh exactly what they want to weigh. Junk food doesn't ruin your brain, it adds to your 5th place. So, I have a husband who goes places he shouldn't, drinks more than his libido can handle, gives into his impulses, and then tries to make up for it by being sorry. I'll be the one who regrets if I don't prepare myself for what to do the next time he's sorry. I'm not one of his naive girls, but that fool thinks I am. I called my former employer and began negotiating a return to the job I would have had if I hadn't gone on maternity leave. Although they were initially reluctant, we came to an agreement. I'll be finishing my MBA over the next 2 years and working on a few projects via Zoom for a very low salary, a chance for me to prove and improve myself and earn that big job. It took almost 4 months before I could enroll in the executive MBA program at our city-state university. Classes were held on Tuesdays and Thursdays each semester for 2 years. I needed to find daycare for our daughter, Sarah. This worried me the most. My husband's infidelity forced me to transfer part of Sarah's formative years into the hands of a stranger. I found a woman with a degree in child psychology who wanted to start a small daycare in her home. She thought she could look after 6 to 8 children and currently had 3. Sarah could be brought mostly on Tuesdays and Thursdays and left whenever it was convenient for me. I could pick her up any time before 6 p.m. It seemed like the perfect solution. A little over a year later, as I now call him, my husband cheated again. I had a year left before I graduated, returned to work full-time and left him. This time there were no confessions, no false grief, just the smell of her on him. I decided not to admit the betrayal at that moment. A couple of weeks later, I unexpectedly strengthened my warning against further infidelity. He thought he was being clever, but I could see there was a light in his eyes with no one home. It was an ordinary morning when Luther said, "Listen, I'll be home a little late tonight. I have a business dinner." Business dinners on Wednesdays had become the norm for him. He had to stay home with Sarah on Tuesday and Thursday evenings because I was taking 2 extra classes in the evening MBA program. All the students except me worked during the day. "What time will you be home?" I asked. I was sure he had nothing to do except monkey business, but it would still be a few months before I could walk away with everything I wanted. It shouldn't be too late, around 9 or 10. "Oh, what's the name and address of Sarah's kindergarten?" Sarah has been going there for over a year, and Luther had no reason to know the name or location all this time. Now that's the question. I wondered why I swallowed my question, smiled and said, "Barnett, 134 to 29, 145th Street. It should be in the handbook for cheaters to assume that your spouse only has one or in the water, when in reality, cheaters are usually as sharp as marbles." Okay, thanks, I thought. I should have known that he walked out of the kitchen and into the bedroom. I was working in the kitchen and knew he didn't expect me to follow him, but I peeked around the corner. He took out his phone from the inside pocket of his jacket. The phone was in a green case. I returned to the kitchen. He usually carries his phone in his trouser pocket, and it has a black case. The man has two phones. He needs information about kindergarten for his new girlfriend or one of them. Well, this might come in handy. I need to look at this phone. The idiot returned to the kitchen. We exchanged the usual goodbye kiss and he left. I had everything ready. It was time to wake Sarah up and feed her breakfast. For the first time, I was sure I would get my revenge on the idiot. It was a war of wits and only one of us was armed. I was reading about market segmentation when the phone rang. Ugh, I hate answering landline calls. The display said Katie Barnett, so I answered, "Katie, what a pleasant surprise. How are you?" "Better, Janet. Thank you. Having two new children will change a lot, and from such a famous family." Well, the idiot didn't waste any time. I didn't want to know that. I had no idea who she was talking about, probably a local celebrity. I tried to guess, hoping it might spark a conversation. "You've got to be kidding me. Ron Ward has written 3 best-selling books. He might not have been famous 6 months ago, but now he's a national figure. I'm behind the times. I haven't read anything that isn't marketing or finance related in a year. The truth is, my husband works with his wife. Neither of us knew who she was married to." "Oh, so you don't know Mr. Ward?" Katie sounded worried. "No, I didn't have the pleasure. I'm sure Luther didn't either. He would have mentioned it." Katie's disappointment was audible. "I was hoping you could introduce us." "Oh well, maybe I can introduce you. He's the primary caregiver for the kids in the family, and his wife is an executive at some tech company." "But you said you know her." "Looking forward to meeting him," she said and thanked me again for the referral. I was amazed by the coincidence. Mr. Ron Ward found himself in the same situation I found myself in, though he may not have realized it yet. Suddenly rich and the children's primary caregiver, he was soon to be absolutely ripped off in divorce court. If he agrees, he will be a great partner. This is the idiot's third strike. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the age of faith. It was the age of unbelief. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. I'm Ron Ward and I wish I had written these words, but Charles Dickens did. I remembered them because they fit my life now. I was a full-time financial analyst and amateur writer until a few months ago when my third novel, Fiction to Fortune, became a #1 bestseller. Soon after, sales of my first 2 novels took off. The novel was a James Bond-style spy thriller. The villain was an unscrupulous, wealthy, well-connected hedge fund manager. His careful study had made him an expert on how news affects stock and commodity prices. Instead of waiting for news and then reacting like everyone else, he developed ways to leak false stories that appeared genuine. He made huge financial maneuvers before the false stories emerged, and when the rest of the financial world followed, he took profits before his falsely created bubble burst. He earned money with a shovel until the unthinkable happened. His rumor became a reality. He predicted that a third-world dictator would stop mining in his country by cutting off the supply of rare earth materials. The dictator read the story, liked the idea of the power such a step would give him, and he stopped mining. The villain saw his chance to create reactions to the dictator's actions that could cause world chaos. Luckily, before the world economy collapsed, the hero spy caught the villain and wrote a few rumors that brought the world back from the brink, just as he always does. This was the first time I used the idea that fiction creates real events. It won't be the last. Book sales were just beginning. I was suddenly surrounded by all sorts of people wanting to turn the book into a movie, and people who wanted to represent me, taking a lot of my earnings to prevent others from taking a lot of my earnings. So, it seemed to me better times, of course, but these were also the worst times. Someone said, "Nothing contributes to success like success." I can assume that this person has never been successful. Success is ruining your life, and that's serious. Everything changes. Sure, you can get a wider seat on the plane, but suddenly there are demands to fly everywhere all the time. People are looking for you, No one will leave you alone. Do you understand what I'm talking about? All these changes took a toll on my marriage, although I'm not sure what exactly has affected it. My wife, Maureen, is organized and logical. She and a couple of college friends joined a new tech company right out of high school. They became a great team, and for several years their group essentially ran the company, which during this time grew more than 20-fold. I know my success has changed her idea of order, but it seems like there's more to it than that. Maureen and I have two beautiful children. Our oldest Ben is 3 years old and his little sister Andrea will turn 2 in 3 months. Maureen is Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Widgets Incorporated. She took 2 years of maternity leave. Ben was born on the day her leave began, and she returned to work 6 months after Andrea was born. I stayed at home with the children. Maureen's spontaneity tends to vanish. She liked that I was in a stable job with an income below hers and had ambitions to become a writer. This guy could reliably stay home with the kids and do as he was told. I asked Maureen if she knew anyone who used daycare services. I was stunned when she said she was unhappy. This was not what we had agreed on. The children need us. Sorry, but your use of the word we is quite generous when referring to yourself, don't you think? No, I don't think so. And how dare you? We agreed that our life is such that we can have children and you would stay at home with them. Now you want to run around, having chance meetings and monthly book signings. That hardly qualifies as wandering. Maureen, calm down. I don't wander at all. I spend most of the day with our children. What about your sudden changes in work habits? Once or twice a week, do you stay after work for some events? I know you value stability, but for a while that meant my stability. You could do whatever you wanted. Don't you dare throw that in my face. This isn't about me. This is about you not fulfilling your obligations. I'm not going to discuss this with you. You have something else on your mind and we can't figure it out by scolding me. I achieved my goal. The argument stopped, and after a few minutes she gave me the name of the kindergarten. I was amazed. Barnett Nursery. Thanks to Kathy Barnett, who had a small child and wanted to be a mother while earning a living, she was a highly qualified child psychologist and decided to create an exclusive kindergarten to achieve both of her goals. Our two quickly settled into her care. I really didn't like leaving my kids, but she was so nice that it was almost painless, well, until the day I dropped them off. I met Janet Monroe. I got out of the car, and when I was almost back to the car, a woman approached me. Ron Ward, it's so cool. Fans recognized me. Yes, it's me. Thank you for reading my books. Oh, sorry, I'm not finished yet. But my name is Janet Monroe. I think we need to talk. Damn, this is awkward. Nothing is more confusing than assuming that people approaching you are fans. Forgive my embarrassment. May I ask what you want to talk about? She looked at her feet. Actually, she looked down because her bust had prevented her from seeing her legs since elementary school. I think I'd like us to talk privately and get to know each other a little. But come to think of it, if I were you, I'd want to know why some stranger wants to talk to me. There's no easy way to say it. My husband and your wife are having an affair. I sighed. That's it? She looked confused. Excuse me? What do you mean? Strange behavior, fighting when we have nothing to fight about, more nights out, the whole list of things. Oh, and a big attack on my shirking the responsibilities of taking our children to strangers for care. Oh, you may be wondering how I know that. Well, obviously you're more knowledgeable than I am. I have to admit I'm a little behind on all this. She laughed. I haven't been the sharpest tool in the shed for a while either. Then one day the jerk, and by the way that's what I call my husband, Jerk, although some people call him Luther, asks me about our garden. I interrupted her. I knew it. I asked my apparently ex-wife if she knew of a daycare center, and in less than 10 minutes she gave me the name. She tried to keep me in the dark, but it shed some light. Janet was smiling now. That's how they got caught. Well, I can't speak about your wife, but I know if the idiot had a brain like dynamite, he wouldn't be able to blow his nose. We both laughed. Even stupidity helps in such situations. Janet continued. I discovered the idiot had a secret cell phone. When he asked me where our daughter went to daycare, she'd been going there for over a year, and suddenly the location became important to him. Well, obviously we need to talk. I'm going to a book signing now. Sorry if that sounds arrogant. Actually, no. It's impressive. I'm reading a book. I'd like you to sign it too. How about tomorrow? Well, I usually stay home with Sarah. You only have one. I have two. Bring Sarah to our house for a playdate. I'd love it if my wife caught us together with the kids. She broke into a smile. Oh, you're just a villain. I like it a lot. What time is it? Give me your address. I gave it to her and we agreed before we parted. She made me promise not to tell Lauren until we met the kids. My first impression of Ron Ward was that he is a serious and pleasant man. The sparkle in his eyes when he suggested meeting at his home belied his decorous appearance. He showed no emotion when he found out about the betrayal. It was as if he had solved a puzzle. Shouldn't there have been at least a spark of anger or pain? Perhaps he just never shows emotion. I thought about telling the idiot that I was going to the wards with Sarah, but then I decided it was better not to do it. I didn't want him to know that I was aware and that I was thinking about it until I had my share of the meat. The idiot was getting ready for work. I made his usual toast and coffee and was busy getting ready for Sarah's playdate. Are you taking Sarah to kindergarten today? No, we will be together all day today. However, we will go out somewhere. Let's see how curious he is. Oh, that's good. Have fun. He walked out the door. There is a correlation between curiosity and intelligence. He showed no curiosity. Sarah was delighted. Shall we go to Mrs. Dunlap's? No, honey, not today. But we will see some of your friends. She seemed pleased with this. Her third birthday was almost upon us. At the very least, all the trauma of the transition of family life would disappear before she really became aware of the world around her. Putting your baby in a car seat along with the necessary items for a few hours away from home is similar to the pioneering experience of loading a covered wagon. I packed the supplies, then Sarah into the car seat. If we ever needed an antidote for a snake bite, we were ready to save the world. 30 minutes later, we were at the Ward residence. It was a pleasant country house with a large front yard and a beautiful lawn and garden. Apparently, the Wards were doing well even before his novels started selling. I was getting out of the car when Ron came out carrying a 2-year-old beauty in his arms. I took Sarah and we headed out to meet them. Ron turned to Sarah. What a sweet beauty you are. What is your name? She turned her head, still shy. This is Andrea, Mom. As soon as Sarah said this, Andrea smiled widely. The momentary shyness of both disappeared. Ron looked into my car. I think you've got enough for the morning, he grinned. You should have seen what happens when there are two of them. A Sherpa or Schlepper should be provided with this equipment. Sherpa or Schlepper? You must be a writer, I said. This made him smile proudly. Let's go into the house. You tell me what you need and I'll carry it while you look after the three. I'd be falsely proud, but you know who gets the best share. I brought her crib. She can sleep with Ben. We just bought him a big bed. Besides, people in our families are used to sleeping together. Otherwise, that's a euphemism, sleeping together. I want it, Sarah suddenly said. Ron enjoyed Sarah's words and replied, oops, small ears and big ears, as they say. I do like the conversation that might follow. Well, that's what we want to talk about. We'll discuss the main thing before the kids go to sleep. Some things have to remain a secret until we get everything in order. Ducks where? Sarah was determined to take things literally. Ron set up a children's playroom with nothing that might fall on the little ones and soft toys for everyone. Sarah and Ben were almost the same age and the three were used to being together. It was cute to see how Ron's kids tried to get Sarah to play with their toys without worrying about their treasures being stolen. This makes me kind of sad, I said. What? He asked, clearly interested. Sharing is an expression of love. There is a lot of love here. It is a pity that some do not know the limits in their giving. Let me clean your car and we can talk about it. Ron returned to find the three crawling around with 2 toy trucks and a stuffed bear. There was some kind of connection between the trucks and the bear and we found ourselves almost out of their attention. Thanks for coming. You seem to be doing well with them. But since the three on the floor sometimes hear strange words, let's talk about the movie Daniel and Wilma were in. Tell me, are they in love or just having fun? Oh, it was a good movie. The audience learned a lot when they found Daniel's phone. It revealed a love story. For the first time I saw Ron's emotions. The love story touched him and he was not afraid to show it. Ron, I can see how you're reacting to this movie. We should probably postpone our conversation, shouldn't we? Yes, but if you can tell me everything and don't mind how it affects me, I can wait for that part of our conversation. I shrugged. Like most love stories, they talk about marriage, but she has 2 goldfish and wants full rights to them. There is a man courting them now, and she is afraid that he will not want to let them go. She's right about that. He growled. What's wrong, Dad? Came the voice of little Andrea. Dad's just being stupid. Sorry I got too loud. We're talking about a movie for adults. There's a bad man in it. As his voice became calmer, his daughter became less interested in what he was saying, and returned to playing before he finished his sentence. So he didn't finish either. Well, that tells me that it's not so much the words that matter but the emotions. He laughed and playfully added, I'm going to strangle this. The children did not react. What made it such a good movie was that whoever was telling the story was the planner. Her plan involved revenge on the happy couple. I started giggling. Towards the end of it I looked at Ron and said, the funny voices in this story put me in a certain mood. His eyes lit up. It would be fascinating to try to write about how to say one thing and mean another. The light in his eyes went out. He became serious and said lightly, but we are here to talk about films. I don't think her plan will work out though. And why is that? Well, her lover has a fish too and he doesn't mind keeping his own fish, claiming he'll be happy to get 2 new ones. But tell me, do you know anyone who's willing to give up his goldfish but is happy to get new ones? No, I don't know. We talked like this for some time. We were getting pretty good at it. Neutral tones were key. They are white noise among the very small. The thing that bothered us the most was when he asked if I remembered why the story was written. I told him that as far as I remembered, everyone at her old house loved her and treated her like a princess. I shouldn't have used the word princess in front of 2 little girls who both wanted to know about this princess. I promised that I would read the story to them later, which gave me some time. Then, as she was now called, discovered that rough handling, harsh syntax and strong dialogue during dates had some value to her. My description made Ram laugh out loud. Maybe you'll become a writer too. I'm sure such actions have never been described more harmlessly. My voice came a voice from the floor. Not even a minute had passed before a general grumbling began, which quickly turned into screaming. We got everyone up and into Ben's bed. They fell asleep almost instantly. Now we could talk. Ron, I'm so sorry we went through it the way we did. No, you know that was the best way to do it. Getting that kind of news in the guise of a fun conversation isn't that bad. Well, it's bad. It's just maybe better than the dirty details like the rigid syntax. He laughed. I explained the first time to Luther, his second time along with my threat. Now the idiot doesn't think I'm serious, but he's dumber than a box of rocks. Ron looked at me with a serious expression on his face. And that's why you're taking it for granted. Puns aside, he'll be sorry. Well, sorry for you seems to include harming him. I'm not sure I'm ready to go to jail over this. Ron, don't be such a— Revenge does not mean inviting them to tea and cake, and when they reach for a second slice saying no, this is my revenge. There won't be a second time. He laughed. That's what I want. I want her to get what she deserves. That she deserves nothing. But if I file for divorce, she will prosper and I will be deprived and lose Ben and Andrea. I won't allow that. If you can explain to me how revenge will make me happier, I'm with you. It's a challenge, but not as big as you think. The jerk has strong qualities that we can count on. Firstly, he likes to chase skirts. He can't help himself and it's getting worse. Secondly, his behavior becomes progressively worse as his alcohol consumption increases. Ron thought for a moment then said, so if my wife caught the idiot with another woman and got revenge, that might work. We need her to do it in such a disgusting way that she loses, the idiot gets his punishment, and we live happily ever after. A crime of passion planned by people not involved in it. You should write works of fiction. Although such a story may be difficult for people to accept in terms of suspension of disbelief, it's easy with the more he drinks, the more he drinks. Drinking makes him follow the wrong organ, if that's not too harsh of a word. Interesting choice of words, but understandable. So getting him into bed with his second in command isn't a problem. Our problem is that Morin isn't the vindictive type. She just needs encouragement. Does she read your books? Not so much lately, but that's been a big part of my process. I'm confident I can get her back to reading. What am I writing about? What a woman. I don't remember ever meeting anyone like that. Janet is warm and caring. She is smart and witty. We found a common language. We are closer than one might expect when we share cheating spouses. Our connection is who we are. We are similar souls. Strange. Why am I thinking about her? She suggested a way to get back at our cheating spouses. It's cold, but my thoughts about her are, on the contrary, warm. Why did Morin cheat? My connection with Morin is practical. We became lovers because we were right for each other. We were comfortable, compatible, boring. I never thought about it like that. I love that we were so predictable. We met and realized we wanted the same thing. We were both smart and ambitious. The more we learned about each other, the more obvious it became that we should get married. Can Janet and I really be so cunning as to allow cheaters to self-destruct? Are we that wise? Or better yet, are they that stupid? Janet knows Luther. She says he has two predictable qualities and Morin is predictable too. Can we harness this predictability? Janet and I would never be predictable in that way. Janet called herself a planner. I would call her an innovator. Morin ties the tasks together. It's a plan for her. She went on maternity leave, gave birth to her son, got pregnant as soon as possible, and once her daughter could go without her milk for 9 hours, Morin returned to work. One task after another. She never became a mother. She simply gave birth to 2 children. I stop my thoughts as they jump from one thing to another. That's what I do when I create. I write down my thoughts and sort them later. What is it about this that makes me jump from one thought to another? Just a few hours spent with Janet gave me an idea of what happiness looks like. She wanted revenge, but our meeting was not about revenge. She knew she was bringing me the worst news I could receive. She was more concerned about how this news would affect me than the possibility of recruiting me as an accomplice. This was complicated by having to find a graceful way to break the news to 3 kids. It was easy. The humanity she showed towards me and the children was evident. Janet had a goal more than a goal. It was her holy grail. However, she also cared about me, a stranger. Morin and I have never shared such humanity, passion, yes, partnership and love. I thought so, but the real concern, not really. Perhaps Morin found it with Luther. I sat in a chair looking into space. Maybe I'm wrong. If I felt something with my soulmate in just a couple of hours, maybe that's normal. Maybe Morin just fell for this as nonsense. I haven't slept with Janet and I don't plan to. I am not plotting with her to take our children away from Morin. I am plotting with Janet to keep Morin from intentionally harming me. I want to think of my wife as the person I thought I loved, regardless of whether she has changed or whether I'm in love with her. Today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. I seemed to return from a deep dark hole and found myself in a room that I had seen somewhere before, but in my dazed state, I could not remember where or when. The tube stuck in my nose was uncomfortable, and the noise of voices brought my mind into greater awareness. I recognized the voice of my wife demanding something from someone in a white coat. "How is he? What happened to him?" she asked. I felt a moment of hostility toward her, but I couldn't remember why I was angry with her. The figure in the white coat replied, "At the moment, we are not sure what his problem is. We will run a series of tests in the morning to see if there is damage to his heart, but we will keep him in the intensive care unit overnight and monitor his condition. For now, we are preparing to sedate him so he can rest comfortably tonight. We will continue to give him oxygen." I felt a prick in my arm which somehow seemed constrained, and after what seemed like a few minutes, I slid back into my comfortable dark pit. When I woke up again, it was morning and the nurse was adjusting the 4 hooked up to my arm. I looked around the room, and the devices connected to my body told me that I was in intensive care. My wife was curled up in the chair by the window, sleeping, and again I felt slightly irritated, but I couldn't remember why I was angry with her. The nurse suddenly noticed that I was awake and spoke. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. How are you feeling this morning?" "Dizzy," I managed to say with difficulty. My throat was dry. "Well, drink this and you will feel better," she said, bringing the straw to my lips, and I took a sip of water. The noise of our conversation must have woken my wife. "Jack, are you okay, honey? I'm so sorry about what happened." "What happened?" I wondered in my fuzzy mental state. I tried to remember anything from my memory that could explain what happened and why I was here. Suddenly, I remembered the previous evening and what caused my uncontrollable rage. It was like turning on a light bulb in a dark room. "You bitch!" I suddenly shouted at my wife. "Get out of my sight." My wife looked at me with horror on her face. Alarms were ringing all around me, and a panicked nurse tried to calm me down. "Mr. Carter, please calm down." "Mrs. Carter, you will have to leave immediately," the nurse said to my wife as she adjusted the valve on the floor, and within seconds, I slid back into my comfortable dark hole. The last thing I remembered was my wife crying and leaving the intensive care unit. When I woke up again, it must have been about noon because the room was filled with sunlight, and I heard the voice of my eldest son, David. "When will we be able to find out how he is physically? The family is very concerned about his mental state as well." "He should wake up soon," the doctor replied, "and once he does, we'll begin running tests to determine the status of his heart and other vital signs. We should get an idea of his physical condition later this afternoon. Regarding his mental state, I would suggest that you or a family member other than Mrs. Carter sit down and talk to him. From what I have been told, he is reacting strongly to your mother, so we are asking her to stay away until the problems in their marriage are resolved. A psychiatrist or marriage counselor may be needed to resolve the marital problems that seem to be bothering your father, but first we must determine his physical condition." "Okay, doctor, thank you very much. I will speak on behalf of the family in my mother's place," David said. "I understand," the doctor said, turning to my bed. "Oh great, Mr. Carter, I see you're awake. We'll start testing right away. Dad, how are you feeling? Can I get you something?" "Yes, you can keep your mother away from me, and tell John Masters that I want to see him as soon as possible." "John Masters, your lawyer?" "Yes, okay, Dad, if that's what you want. I'll try to arrange a meeting with him tomorrow, but you need to explain this to us. Mom is almost on the verge of a nervous breakdown." "I know, son, and I'll try to talk to you more on that later." "How did it all start? Why am I so angry with my wife of 25 years? I need to go back 12 years to when I found out my wife was cheating on me. It almost destroyed me that the person I loved most in the world betrayed me and our children. At the time, I thought we were happily married with 3 wonderful children. David was 12, Sandra was 10, and Michael was 7. I had a good job, and my very beautiful wife Ginger, who was 35, worked part-time as a bank teller. Before I found out about her infidelity, I felt like something was wrong in our marriage. I noticed strange clues that made me suspicious. Our nightlife dwindled to almost nothing. Then, as I searched her purse for her checkbook, I discovered a hotel receipt for last Tuesday while I was on a business trip. Continuing the search through her purse, I found a pack of protections with 2 missing, hidden in a secret compartment that I found by feeling the lining of the back. This prompted me to look into our household finances while she was at work one Saturday morning. She usually handled the finances and paid the bills, so I had no reason to look at our records. I discovered that one of our credit cards had been charged twice in the past month for the same airport hotel. The dates coincided with the time when I was on a business trip. If she was seeing a lover, I wondered why the hell she was paying for the room. Was her lover another woman? I also found her cell phone bills and found a number that was called regularly that I didn't recognize. Now it was more than a suspicion, and I felt my chest begin to tighten and a nauseous feeling developed. I went into the bathroom and sat on the toilet to see if the feeling would go away. While I waited, I thought, is she really cheating on me? Why is she doing this? Am I not giving her enough of my love? I thought our intimate life was good. I tormented myself with the unknown. I had to find out the truth. After a while, the feeling of nausea and stress went away, and I decided that in the future I would have to be more careful, otherwise I might have a heart attack. I made an appointment with our lawyer, John Masters, for next Tuesday. I didn't say anything to Ginger but tried to act normal. However, when she suggested having a night, I couldn't respond and blamed it on the pressure of a new project at work. She seemed to accept it and was content to just cuddle up to me. On Tuesday, I took the day off from work and went to John. He was surprised to learn that Ginger might be involved in an affair, but he recommended that to be sure and have enough evidence of the affair, I should hire a licensed private investigator to gather the necessary information and photographs to support my allegations. He also advised me of my limited rights regarding child custody, and recommended that it would be cheaper and better for the children if I confronted her and forced her to end the relationship in order to save the marriage and family. I agreed to take into account everything he told me, but still decided to have a private investigator document the affair. He thought it would probably be wise to do this and gave me the address and telephone number of a private detective he could vouch for. As soon as I got back to my office, I called and made an appointment with the detective, Sam Davis, for the next day. Sam turned out to be a sharp-witted man, and when I told him about the evidence I had found, in this case, he told me that he wanted immediate access to her car and house to install recording devices, and I was not to tell her until he installed them. I knew she was at work and her car would be in the bank parking lot, so we went there straight away. He installed a sound-activated recorder under the driver's seat. We then went to our house, where he hooked up our phone and hid several wireless mini microphones around the house with a receiver and recording device in an unlocked shed behind our house. This way, he said, his associate could pick up the recordings daily while my wife was away from the house. I gave him a spare key to Ginger's car when he asked and told him that his associate would change the tapes there periodically. When he finished, he wrote down the number I found in Ginger's phone log and said he would check who it belonged to. I then went back to work after he told me he would contact me that night. After dinner, I told Ginger about my planned business trip, and she seemed sad that I was leaving again. I noticed that the heavy feeling in my chest and nausea were now with me constantly. I carried on with my life as usual, waiting for Sam to contact me. If she acted like a loving wife, I would have to act like a loving husband. That weekend, I had an intimate with Ginger so as not to arouse her suspicion. I put a lot of effort into our lovemaking. What was that, honey? We haven't had a night like this since before we had kids. I wanted to show you how much I love you and appreciate how much you mean to me and the kids. I really appreciate it, Jack. Sometimes I feel like I'm just taken for granted. Anytime you need to pick me up, honey, let me know. I appreciate everything you do to keep our marriage and our family together. Thanks, Jack, and I'll be sure to let you know. After this, she laughed, I'll miss you while you're away. Keep me in your thoughts while you're away. I don't want you to cheat, darling. I've always been faithful to you and I'm not going to cheat. It's soothing, darling. Are you being good while I'm gone? This was the moment of truth. It seemed to me she didn't hesitate when she answered. Yes, darling, you are the only one for me. You and the children are my only reason for living. As they say, I'm glad to hear that. We have a perfect marriage and a perfect family. We shouldn't ruin it. I agree with you 100%. Now I need to sleep. You've completely exhausted me. Good night, darling. She didn't blink in response. Perhaps I was wrong about her. The coming week could make everything clearer. I tried to sleep but tossed and turned all night, imagining her having an intimate with some guy in a hotel room. I left for the airport on Monday morning, saying goodbye to Ginger with a kiss as usual. I instructed the children to behave and obey their mother before I left. After I pulled away from the house, I pulled over to the side of the road around the corner as I felt myself starting to hyperventilate. I took out the paper bag I had brought with me and breathed into it. After a few minutes, I was almost back to normal and continued on my way. While I was away, I had a hard time concentrating on things but tried to stay focused so as not to think about what Ginger might be doing in my absence. On the flight back, I was so anxious that I went to the bathroom twice with my paper bag to calm my nerves. When I arrived home on Wednesday evening, I tried to act natural, but I think she knew something was wrong. I avoided her greeting kiss by letting her kiss my cheek. Is something bothering you, Jack? You were acting strange even before you left on Monday. It's probably stress from a new project at work, I told her, hoping to avoid further discussion of what might be troubling me. You've never let work bother you like this before. This is a special project and I can get a big promotion because of it, I lied. Well, I'm worried about you. Do you want to take a Valium? They help me when I'm feeling stressed. Okay, I'll try half. I thought they might be better and less noticeable than a paper bag. After taking the pill, I waited, and after a while I felt myself coming to my senses. I breathed a sigh of relief. Are you feeling better, Jack? Yes, much better. Thank you. Do you want to go up to the bedroom now? I sent the kids to my parents for the night. It was a clear invitation tonight, but I didn't think I could respond, at least until I heard from the private detective, and after that, perhaps never again. I'm really tired, honey. I'd just like to sleep. Okay, honey. She looked disappointed and worried. I didn't know if she was worried about my health or if she suspected something. Perhaps the private investigator will find nothing, and this will all pass. I woke up early the next morning, showered and got dressed for work. I wasn't sleeping well due to nervous energy, so apparently, the Valium stopped working. Before leaving home, I found my wife's bottle of pills and took some Valium with me, then took another half of the pill. I stopped at a 24-hour cafe where I ate breakfast and drank a cup of decaf coffee, then was ready to go. Around 9 o'clock I couldn't wait any longer, and closing the door to my office, I called Sam to find out what had happened in my absence. Sam, this is Jack Masters. What can you tell me about the last few days regarding my wife? Mr. Masters, I was just about to call you. Can you come to my office this morning so I can give you a full report of what we found? I'll be there in 15 minutes, Sam. Taking another half of the Valium, I told my secretary that I would be gone for about an hour, and asked her to call me on my cell phone if anything urgent required my attention. When I arrived at Sam's office, his secretary waved me into his office, and I walked in with a feeling of trepidation. Sam stood up as I entered and extended his hand across the table. I'm guessing you want to know what we found out, he said. So let's get straight to the point. Your wife is really having an affair, he told me without preamble. Oh God, I was afraid of this, I said, leaning back in the chair in front of his desk. I'm afraid this is more than just an affair. She isn't a hardcore intimate with her lover, and seems to enjoy submitting to him and others' intimacy. Pain is her main motivator, he continued. He started placing a series of photos in front of me, and I saw my wife completely without anything, having a night with 2 men. I suddenly felt nauseous and rushed out of Sam's office, down the hallway to the toilet, where I vomited my breakfast and more. It took me a while to come to my senses, and I took another half of the Valium before heading back to Sam's office. His secretary looked at me with sympathy when I returned. Sorry about that, I said. He put the photos away while I was gone and put them in an envelope. These are preliminary results until I hear from you how far you want to go next. We also have video of the entire Tuesday evening, he said, handing me an envelope. When you decide to terminate our services, we will prepare a final report for you and a copy for your lawyer. By the way, we have discovered that her master is John Harding, a vice president at the bank where she works. I was still in shock, but the Valium was now helping me stay calm and I could think quite clearly. Okay, Sam, I'll let you know. I need to think a little about my options now. I understand. We will wait for your response. I headed back to the office and had some quiet time for reflection. Returning to the office, I had to make a decision that would affect our marriage, my family, and our children. I sat in my office all day, not even leaving for lunch. My secretary knew something was bothering me, and correctly suspected that it had to do with problems at home. She checked in on me a couple of times to see how I was doing, and my boss came down to talk when he found out I was closed for the day. Jack, I know you're having problems, and if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Why don't you take the rest of the day off and go home, he suggested. Thank you for your concern and suggestion, Jerry, but I'm better off thinking alone here, I replied. I understand. We all wish you the best, he said as he closed the door and left. I sat there until my usual leaving time, and by then, I had decided what I needed to do. I took another half of the Valium on the way home and was fairly calm when I walked into our house. Ginger met me at the door and tried to kiss me, but I avoided it. Jack, she exclaimed, what's happened? Ginger, we need to talk. I'm going to take the kids to your parents for a while and we can talk when I get back, I said. She turned pale and looked at me with horror but whispered, okay, Jack. When I returned, she was sitting in her usual chair in the living room. I walked over, closed the curtains on the windows, turned on the light in the room and then turned to her. Ginger, Get up and take off your clothes, I said. She looked at me in shock. I'm sorry, what? You heard me. Get up and take off your clothes now. Oh God, you know. Please don't make me do this, Jack. Please do it, Ginger, or I'll come and rip your clothes off. Crying and make a sound, she stood up and began to take off her clothes. She stopped when she was left in her bra and panties. I could already see the red marks of violence on her beautiful body. That's it, I said. Tears streamed down her face as she removed her bra, revealing painful marks on her perfectly shaped breasts. Removing her panties revealed even more bite marks and lash marks on her beautiful buttocks and thighs. Oh God, Ginger, how could you? How could you? I cried, tears streaming down my face as I looked at her. I'm so sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry. I couldn't resist. Go put your robe on and come back. We'll talk and you'll have to make some decisions, I said, trying to wipe away my tears with the sleeve of my shirt. I felt my chest begin to tighten again and seemed restless until she left the room, and I took another half of the Valium. When she returned in a robe, I began to feel calmer. I waited for her to sit in the chair. I handed her an envelope with photos of her dates and said, look at them. This is what your family, your parents, my parents, and all our friends will see, as well as the divorce court. Look at every one of them. I really don't think she saw any of the pictures as she quickly flipped through them, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs and her eyes filled with tears. Oh God, what have I done? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I want you to tell me about it. I don't need painful details. Just tell me how it started. Tell me if you had other relationships. Tell me if the children are mine. Tell me if you love and want to go to your master, John Harding. Oh Jack, I've never had any other relationships and I love you and want to stay with you and our children. The children are yours. Please don't doubt it. Don't kick me out. I need your help. I need to understand why I did it. I'm so sorry this happened. I love you and the kids so much. I can't bear the thought of losing it. I felt my heart beating in my chest, mostly out of rage. It was a white-hot fireball in my stomach that Valium couldn't calm. Tell me the rest, and remember, if I find out you lied, I'll make you pay. Okay. It all started 6 months ago when I was taking a 3-week course for bank tellers. John Harding taught the course to me and 3 other women who wanted to work part-time. I was having trouble learning some of the things he taught, and he invited me to stay after class for extra lessons after the bank closed. I was so grateful for his willingness to give me extra time that I apparently began to let him control me, and I liked it. I don't know why. Then I started meeting him in the evenings while you were on a business trip. We met at a hotel near the airport, and he started making me pay for the room. I felt so embarrassed and cheap about what I was doing. I wanted to stop, but he showed me a video of us together and what I let him do to me, and he said he would send it to you if I didn't do what he wanted. I'm so glad it's over and that I can move on with my life, but I need to understand why I did it. I really need your help, and I'm so sorry that things turned out this way. I love you and the children so much that I can't bear the thought of losing you. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, mostly from rage. It was like a white-hot fireball in my stomach that the Valium couldn't calm down. Now you have to make a decision. These are your options, and I need an answer by tomorrow morning. 1. I will divorce you and take full custody of the children. If you don't agree to full custody and limited visitation rights, I will release the private investigator's report with all the photos to all our family and friends and let the world know what you did. Then you can continue your connection with your master. 2. I will agree not to get a divorce, but you must agree to resign from the bank, testify to our lawyer about what you did, and agree to certain restrictions on your future activities. I'm giving you this option very reluctantly, but our children are still young enough to need a mother, and you are the best candidate. I will not make the private investigator's report public, but I will hold it as a guarantee of your future loyalty and respect for me. I also want you to get tested for STDs. Oh, thank you, honey, for another chance. You won't regret it. I don't want your answer now. I want it tomorrow morning after you've thought about everything. You'll be sleeping in the guest room tonight, and for the foreseeable future. Okay, Jack, I understand. I hope you really understand. The next morning I got up early after a sleepless night. When I fell asleep, I had nightmares where I was standing on a high balcony looking into the bedroom where Ginger was hosting a series of men. I couldn't find a way to get down to stop her and I woke up in a cold sweat. I must have screamed because Ginger knocked on the door twice asking if everything was okay. After she left, I heard her crying as she walked down the hallway back to the guest room. I was sitting in the kitchen drinking decaf coffee before heading back upstairs to shower and get dressed for work when Ginger walked in. She was wearing an old nightgown and robe and looked like she hadn't slept much either. I just looked at her without showing any emotion. She came up to me and looked into my eyes. "Jack, I can't tell you how sorry I am, but I can't keep saying this for the rest of my life. I can only show you that I mean it. I want to accept your offer to stay with you as your wife. I accept any conditions you want to establish regarding my future actions, and I will call right now and resign from the bank. You understand that you will be my wife in name only. I do not plan to have intimate relations with you, and you will live in the guest room indefinitely. As far as I am concerned, you will live as a housekeeper and guardian of our children. You will be paid a weekly salary as a housekeeper and a cash allowance for the purchase of food and other necessary things for the home. I understand, Jack. By the way, you've lost the right to call me darling or use any other term of endearment. My name is Jack, and yes, you can make me breakfast when I come down. I understand, Jack. When I arrived at work, I called Sam and asked him to stop any further action on my case, and asked how long it would take to get a final report on what he had already found. He said he would finish it this afternoon since everything was already on his computer, including the photos. Immediately after finishing the work, he would send a copy to me, and one to my lawyer, John Masters, by courier. For some reason I didn't know at the time, I asked him not to mention in his report the video he took of my wife during her date, but to send it to me. He agreed to do this and did not question my motives since he already had enough photographic evidence to support the conclusions in the report. I then called John Masters and told him what Sam had found out and that a copy of the report would be in his office that evening. We agreed to meet the next day after he read it. "John, I want you to look at the report given that I would like to sue the bank and John Harding. Tomorrow I will bring Ginger so you can listen to her story and take her testimony for whatever case we decide to pursue." "Okay, Jack. I'll read the report as soon as it gets here and I'll be ready to discuss it tomorrow when you get here." I spent the rest of the day canceling the joint credit cards, and at lunchtime, I transferred accounts to another bank in my name only from the one where Ginger worked. I also put our savings in my father's name as a trust for the children. When I got home that night, I brought my copy of the report with me, and after dinner, while the kids were busy with homework, I sat down with her in the living room and showed it to her. I didn't mention anything about the video because on the way home, I stopped at our new bank and rented a safe deposit box for it. Ginger sobbed as she leafed through the report and realized how carefully it had been prepared to document her infidelity. "I don't know what to say, Jack. I just want you to know what I'll have in my safe deposit box if you let me down again." "I understand. I want you at John Masters' office tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, ready to testify about your affair with John Harding. You also need to find the name of a good psychiatrist and make an appointment as soon as possible." "Yes, I will be there and do whatever you say. I want you to know that I called the bank today and quit. I didn't try to contact John Harding. I also found out the name of a psychiatrist today, and the earliest I can get an appointment is next week." "Fine." My heart was still clenching and I continued to take Valium from time to time, trying to keep the situation under control. I started to feel depressed and very sad. That night, I had more nightmares and decided that I might need help from a psychiatrist before this story ended. The next day, I left work at 10 minutes to 10 to meet John and Ginger, who drove her car to John's office. I told my boss that I had personal issues that needed to be resolved, and he understood and said I could take the rest of the day if I needed it. When I arrived at John's office the next morning, I found Ginger in the waiting room and we walked in together. John greeted us and motioned us to the chairs in front of his desk. "I have read the private investigator's report, and now I need to speak with Ginger to determine what kind of case we could make against the bank, John Harding, and any other individuals who may have been involved. So tell me about it, Ginger." Ginger looked at me. "Are you going to sue John Harding and the bank?" I will try to destroy John Harding and the bank should pay because it all started in their class. Ginger turned away quietly, and her shoulders shook as if she had been crying. After a few minutes, she turned back and said, "I'm ready to tell you about it." Tears streamed down her face and John handed her a box of tissues. After she dried her eyes, she began to tell John essentially the same story she had told me earlier. When she finished, John thought for a moment before speaking. "I think we have a case to go to court against the bank, John Harding and any other people who may have been involved, especially if they were also employees of the bank. First, Ginger, I need your signed deposition. I'll highlight a few things you need to pay attention to, and then I'll hand you over to my secretary and she'll transcribe your story. Then we'll sign it and she'll verify your signature. After this, I can begin the process of filing claims against the bank, John Harding and persons unknown. We will be seeking a judgment of about $10 million, but I must warn you, they will try to use the publicity to their advantage. However, they will be just as interested in avoiding publicity as we are. We will also seek to fire John Harding and return any photographs or videos he has." After Ginger's deposition was completed, I returned to work. I thought about going home, but I didn't want to be alone with Ginger. When I thought about her, I felt rage building up inside me and I just couldn't face it. I began to seriously consider divorce as the best solution to our problem, but our children deserved a family, and I vowed to hold on even though I knew I was entering a mental state of rage and depression. Over the next 2 months we lived together and although the rage subsided, I still experienced bouts of depression that left me almost incapacitated at times. I had to take time off from work while Ginger started seeing her psychiatrist. I also started going to sessions. After another 2 months, he was able to adjust my medication and therapy so that I was almost able to function normally and return to work. I knew that the children were suffering because of my condition and the poor relationship I had with their mother. So our life together continued and after a year, it improved to the point that Ginger was again sharing a bed with me. Although we had not tried to have a night for a month or more, I discovered I was able to go to the gym, 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 I was able to go to the gym.